Hello. Hi, everybody. We feed everybody and they take off. Who got the churro? That looked very tasty. We did upload in the app some recipe ideas. I know Super Bowl is in a few hours, but there are some tasty snacks and dips in there if you're interested in recipes. So I just want to wrap up really quick with kind of bringing it back to what I would consider to be like building your playbook for yourself regarding the lifestyle habits. So we talked about this yesterday early, kind of the 6 overall lifestyle pillars and where we have evidence and really making an impact in basically reducing our risk of cancer, surviving cancer, but really in chronic disease versus the ones that are beneficial. So I made this a tiny bit smaller, but I really wanted to emphasize of these 6, what are the things that I really want you to leave and think about when you take back to your life? So when we think about nutrition, we want to focus on our minimally processed, if possible, not processed, but let's be real. There's things that are processed, you know, having a lot of plants in our dietary eating pattern and making sure we eat enough protein. Strengthening exercises, muscle building, strengthening 2 to 3 times a week, even if it's a minute. For those of you that asked me about my song, it's a song, it's really by Moby, who's not really an artist that's super popular now, but if you Google Bring Sally Up on YouTube, you will find many videos of torturous ideas. But if you did that every 3 times a week, recruit somebody, tell them it was amazing. It really does make a difference. When I go back to the obesity conversations, I continue to say it isn't just weight, it is body composition. And when we don't have enough skeletal muscle, it is going to be harder for us to maintain our body composition. And it looks much nicer to have muscle. It's a much more appealing and metabolically active tissue. Overall habits, it isn't about doing more, you guys. It's about doing sometimes less or different. And I want you to be very thoughtful about that. I get a little, like when people start talking about 300 minutes of exercise per week, I get a little cringy because that's a lot of exercise. And so, you know what? Even if you did 300 minutes of exercise per week, but then you sat for the rest of your time, you are negating that amazing effort. So instead of thinking about doing more, think about reducing your sedentary time during your workday, whether that's doing something seated, lifting up those heels, squeezing your butt, standing up a couple of times, grabbing extra water. Please do that. And then really being mindful about added sugars. And I cannot leave this conference without just having the note about alcohol intake. We heard it as of recently, and we continue to say it's something that we need to be very thoughtful about reducing our alcohol intake. And then for the fun, making time to breathe, finding your ikigai. I think there's this weird point of life of like, what's our purpose? And this is a really fun thing to do with those that you love and your kids. And so finding the things that we really enjoy, planning your restorative or downtime, and then last but not least, and I think this is one of my favorite parts of being at these events, surrounding yourself with the right people. Maybe they're not in person, maybe they're online, maybe they're in a weird virtual community, I do not care, but finding space for the right people and things in our lives is really, really key. If watching the news makes you stressed out and want to be very negative, please don't watch the news every day, right? So surrounding yourself with the right people and the right influences. I always say like this, if we could put like the super person cape on, we could all use this. The physical strength and stamina of the body is an expression of the mental. So sometimes when you just don't know what to do, I say physical movement of any kind is really powerful. And so this is something that I think we can all do a better job in our own lives to just really think about this activity. Now I have one last test. No, you're not testing you. Yeah, no, I did not prepare. We don't have the right setup, but when someone asks me, what is the test of longevity? The sit to rise test is a measure of longevity. If anybody has heard of blue zones, this is a measurement of blue zones. What's interesting about blue zones is blue zones, where all the centurions live, they don't really exercise. They're very physically active. So think about that. It's how we live our lives. They don't have to be active. One of the biggest things about blue zones is how functional these adults are. So the sit to rise test is this. If you can go all the way down on the floor and all the way up, you can get a score of 10. If you use any of these little assisted hand, knee, elbow, etc., you deduct 1. Your goal is to get a score of 8. So you get to do 2 assisted. things. So I would love for you all to go test yourselves on your Sit to Rise test. It is a really strong predictor of not only length of life, but health span. Now I'm gonna say that some of you have longer, I call it long femurs, longer legs than I do. Yes, this is easier for the shorter people, but we tend to not have as much strength in our lower body as well, okay? So you can find this online. I didn't come up with it, but it's a really cool test. Lastly, I put out some connection information if anybody needs any resources. I will say one thing, I mentioned this last time. On the bottom left is my YouTube channel. Listen, it isn't like a huge YouTube channel, but every Friday I put out a 5-minute exercise video from my home. This last week was all abs, and anyone can do it. So you're welcome to find out any of my resources. Some of this is patient-facing. I also have a digital download, and then you'll get some kind of follow-up that I only send 2 other emails out, or 3 emails after that. So you can download that as well if you want that. I do not spam you. Lastly, but not least, does anybody have any questions for me before I close out this weekend? Good? Sit to Rise test? How many of you are like, oh man? Yeah, if you want to. I mean, I don't know who's talking next. Like, talk to the coordinator. I will say this. I was at the American College of Lifestyle Conference, and we did it with the Blue Zone's Dan Boutner showed us. And he was like, you know, I used to be really good at doing a 10, and now I'm at like a 9 or an 8. You gonna try it? Okay, do it. Now that's impressive for some longer legs. Did you get a -1? So when we think
Axel
about,
had 9.
You got a 9?
Yeah, and Amber 10.
Pretty impressive. When we think about living life, I want you to think about how we live in our bodies and our minds. So that's what I would love for you to take away from this. Other than that, I always have a great weekend here at West. Hopefully, I ramped you up a little bit for our last talks on breast cancer. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you, guys.